6 months had passed as Phoenix burned. The world had changed completely. Every factory on Earth now made weapons. Every scientist worked on military technology. Every nation sent its best soldiers to train together. Humanity was preparing for war. On the moon, a secret base had been built. It was here that Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos worked day and night. Before joining the Marines, Maria had been a scientist at MIT. She had studied physics and engineering. Now she used that knowledge to understand the enemy. The Earth Defense Coalition had recovered pieces of a crashed Valorian scout ship. Maria and her team took it apart piece by piece. They studied every wire, every circuit, every strange metal plate. Slowly, they began to understand how Valorian technology worked. Their ships used something called jump drives, Maria explained to the War Council one day. It lets them travel faster than light. They can cross the galaxy in hours instead of years. Without this technology, we cannot reach them. We cannot fight back. General Patrick O'Brien, the Marine Commandant, leaned forward. Can we build our own? Maria smiled. We already have. The room went silent with shock. It took us 4 months, Maria continued. The technology is beyond anything we have ever built. But we figured it out. We now have 50 ships equipped with jump drives. They are ready to launch. This was the moment everything changed. Humanity was no longer trapped on Earth. Humanity could now reach the stars. Humanity could now take the fight to the enemy. But there was something else Maria had discovered. Something even more important. The Valorians use energy shields and plasma weapons, she said. Their technology is very advanced, but it has a weakness. Their shields are designed to stop energy attacks. They have been fighting other advanced species for thousands of years. All those species use energy weapons. She pulled up an image on the screen. It showed a simple bullet. They have never fought anyone who still uses kinetic weapons. Bullets, missiles, railguns, their shields do not stop solid objects moving at high speed. Our weapons will go right through their defenses. Sergeant First Class Eddie Huang sat in the back of the room. He was a Marine Scout sniper with 20 years of experience. He had killed enemies on 3 different planets in humanity's brief expansion into space. When he heard this news, he smiled for the first time in months. So their fancy shields cannot stop a bullet? He asked. Correct. And they have never fought anyone who actually wanted to fight them? Also correct. Their soldiers are mostly conscripts from conquered worlds. They have no will to fight. The Valorians themselves consider ground combat beneath them. They have not fought a real war in centuries. Eddie nodded slowly. Then they are in for a very bad surprise. The plan that emerged was bold and dangerous. A strike force of 50,000 Marines would use the new jump drives to attack a Valorian staging base in the Kepler system. This base was 40 light-years from Earth. It served as the main supply hub for Valorian operations in this part of the galaxy. The goal was not to win the war in one battle. The goal was to hurt the enemy, to show them that humanity could strike back, to prove that the 70,000 dead in Phoenix would not be forgotten. Corporal Amy Nielsen volunteered for the mission on the first day. She was 23 years old. 6 months ago, she had been a new Marine fresh from infantry school. She had been excited about her future. She had plans to travel the world and see new places. Then, Phoenix happened. Her little brother Tommy had been visiting their aunt in Phoenix that week. He was 9 years old. He liked dinosaurs and soccer and chocolate ice cream. He had called Amy the night before the attack to tell her about a movie he had seen. Now he was gone, vaporized along with 70,000 others. There was not even a body to bury. Amy had changed after that. The cheerful young woman disappeared. In her place was something harder and colder. She did not smile anymore. She did not laugh. She only trained. She trained with weights and guns and knives. She trained until her muscles screamed and her hands bled. She trained because training was the only thing that kept her sane. When she heard about the mission to Kepler, she knew she had to go. She needed to look the enemy in the eye. She needed to make them pay for what they had taken from her. I joined the Marines to serve something bigger than myself. She wrote in her journal the night before departure. Now I serve 70,000 ghosts. I carry their memory with me. I will not let them down. The fleet assembled in lunar orbit. 50 ships that had once been cargo vessels, now converted into warships. They were ugly and crude compared to Valorian craft. But they carried 50,000 of the most determined warriors humanity had ever produced. Danny Ortiz stood on the bridge of the flagship. They had named it Spirit of Phoenix. It seemed right. In a few hours, we will jump across the galaxy, he told his Marines through the ship's communication system. We will be the first humans to travel so far from home. We will be the first humans to fight an alien species on their own territory. He paused, letting his words sink in. The Valorians have ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They have conquered hundreds of species. They have never lost a war. They look at us and see primitives, insects, animals to be stepped on and forgotten. His voice grew harder. They are wrong. We are United States Marines. We do not run. We do not hide. We do not surrender. When someone hurts our people, we hurt them back 10 times worse. That is what we do. That is who we are. Semper Fi, 50,000 voices replied. Semper Fi, Danny repeated. See you on the other side. The jump drives activated. Space twisted and folded. And 50 ships full of angry Marines vanished from Earth's solar system, heading toward a date with destiny. The Valorians had no idea what was coming. The morning sun rose over Phoenix, Arizona on June 14th, 2847. It was a beautiful summer day. Children waited at bus stops for school. Parents drove to work with coffee in their hands. Old people walked their dogs in the parks. Nobody looked up at the sky. Nobody had any reason to. Then the shadows appeared. 12 massive ships blocked out the sun. They were each bigger than any building in the city. They hung in the air without making a sound. People stopped their cars and got out to look. They pulled out their phones to take pictures. Some laughed nervously. Some called their families. A few started to run, but they did not know where to run to. The ships belonged to the Valorian Empire. The Valorians had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They controlled 10,000 star systems and 1 trillion beings. They had conquered hundreds of species and turned them into slaves. To them, humans were nothing. Just another primitive species on a small planet at the edge of the galaxy. High Overlord Kareth Vex commanded the Valorian fleet. He was 7 feet tall with gray skin and 4 eyes. He had destroyed civilizations before. He felt nothing when he gave the order. Begin the cleansing, he said. Blue fire fell from the sky. The plasma bombardment lasted 47 seconds. That was all it took. When the light faded and the smoke cleared, Phoenix was gone. Where a city of millions had stood, there was only a smoking crater 20 miles wide. 70,000 Americans died in less than a minute. They never knew why. They never had a chance to run or hide or fight back. They were simply erased. Kareth Vex looked at the destruction on his view screen and felt satisfied. The primitive beings had built their homes on top of valuable zenithium ore. Now they were gone, and the Empire could take what it wanted. This was how things had always been done. This was the natural order of the galaxy. He did not understand what he had just awakened. Across America, people watched the news in horror. Footage from satellites showed the moment of destruction. 1 second Phoenix was there. The next second it was gone. Families screamed. Children cried. Old soldiers who had seen many terrible things stared at their televisions and wept at Camp Pendleton in California. Sergeant Major Danny Ortiz heard the news while training young Marines. He was 52 years old. He had served in the Marine Corps for 30 years. He had fought in wars all over Earth and on Mars Colony. He had buried many friends. He thought he understood death and loss and pain. He was wrong. When he saw the footage, something changed inside him. It was not sadness. It was not fear. It was something colder and harder than either of those things. It was a promise he made to himself and to the 70,000 dead. Someone was going to pay for this. All across the military, men and women felt the same thing. This was not like any attack they had faced before. This was not terrorism or war between nations. This was murder on a scale that the human mind could barely understand. And it had come from the stars, from beings who thought humans were so weak and worthless that they did not even deserve a warning. President Laura Mitchell addressed the nation that night. She stood in the Oval Office with the American flag behind her. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "Today we learned that we are not alone in the universe," she said. "We learned it in the worst way possible. 70,000 of our brothers and sisters are dead. They were killed by beings who did not even think we were worth talking to, who saw us as insects to be stepped on." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "To those beings, wherever you are, hear my words. You have made a terrible mistake. We are not insects. We are not primitives to be slaughtered without consequence. We are Americans. We are humans. And we do not forget. We do not forgive. You will face justice for what you have done. I swear this on the souls of the dead." The Valorians were monitoring human communications. They found the speech amusing. The primitive leader was making threats. How cute, how pointless. They had seen this before. Every conquered species made threats at first. Then they learned their place. Then they kneeled and served the empire like all the others. They did not know that humans were different. In the weeks that followed, something remarkable happened. Nations that had been enemies for centuries put aside their differences. Russia and America worked together. China and India shared technology. Old grudges were forgotten. Old hatreds were set aside. For the first time in human history, the entire species united against a common enemy. The United Nations formed the Earth Defense Coalition. They gave it all the resources of every nation on the planet. And they put the United States Marine Corps in charge of its military operations. Sergeant Major Danny Ortiz was called to Washington. He stood in a room with generals and admirals from every country. They asked him one simple question: "Can we fight them?" Danny thought about the question for a long time. The Valorians had ships that could cross the galaxy. They had weapons that could destroy cities in seconds. They had ruled for 12,000 years and conquered hundreds of species. By any logical measure, humanity had no chance. But Danny Ortiz was a Marine. Marines did not care about logical measures. Marines cared about winning. "We can fight them," he said. "We can hurt them. And we can make them regret ever coming to our planet." "How?" a Chinese general asked. "They think we are primitives," Danny replied. "That is their weakness. They have not updated their tactics in 1,000 years because they have not needed to. They are lazy and overconfident. They do not know what humans are capable of when we are angry." He looked around the room at the faces of warriors from every nation. "They killed 70,000 of us. Men, women, and children who never did anything to them. They thought we would cry and hide and accept our place at the bottom of the galaxy." His voice dropped low and hard. "They were wrong. We are going to show them exactly how wrong they were. We are going to take this fight to their doorstep. And we are going to make them understand that some species do not kneel. Some species fight back, and some species make you pay for every drop of blood you spill. The room was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the generals began to nod. The war for humanity's survival had begun. The Kepler staging base was enormous. It had existed for 3,000 years. 12 million Valorians lived and worked there. 300 warships protected it. Orbital defense platforms surrounded it like a ring of iron. No enemy had ever attacked Kepler. The very idea seemed absurd. Who would be foolish enough to challenge the might of the Valorian Empire? Then 50 human ships appeared out of nowhere. Fleet Admiral Sorth Kane was drinking his morning tea when the alarm sounded. He walked calmly to the command center, expecting to see some minor problem. A malfunction in the sensors, perhaps. Or a lost transport ship calling for directions. Instead, he saw 50 unknown vessels at the edge of the system. "What is this?" he demanded. "Unknown ships, Admiral," his aide replied nervously. "They just appeared. Our sensors cannot identify them." Kane studied the readings more closely. The ships were small and crude. Their technology was primitive. Then he realized what he was looking at. "The humans," he said. "The primitives from Earth. Impossible. They do not have jump capability. Apparently, they do now." Kane felt a flicker of annoyance. This was an insult. These primitive creatures had somehow stolen Valorian technology, and now they dared to show up at a Valorian base. It was like a child throwing rocks at a giant. "Destroy them," he ordered. "All ships engage." 300 Valorian warships moved toward the human fleet. Their captains were not worried. They had destroyed thousands of enemy ships over the centuries. These primitive vessels would be no different. Easy targets. Easy kills. The first Valorian cruiser fired a volley of plasma torpedoes at the Spirit of Phoenix. Blue fire streaked across space, enough energy to melt through any ship in the galaxy. The Valorian captain watched with satisfaction, waiting for the human ship to explode. The torpedoes hit the human vessel's magnetic shields and scattered harmlessly into space. The captain stared at his screen in confusion. That was impossible. No primitive species should have technology that could stop Valorian weapons. He ordered another volley, then another. Each time, the human ship absorbed the attack without damage. Then the Spirit of Phoenix fired back. The railgun slug was a simple piece of metal. It weighed about 50 pounds, but it was moving at 12% of light speed. The Valorian shields, designed to stop energy weapons, did not even slow it down. The slug punched through the cruiser like a bullet through paper. It went in through the front, destroyed the reactor core, and came out the back. The ship exploded in a ball of white fire. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Valorian battle bridge went completely silent. Maria Santos watched the explosion from her command station. She had spent months studying the enemy. She had built the weapons that would kill them. Now she saw her work paying off. "All ships," she broadcast calmly. "Weapons free. Make them remember this day." The Battle of Kepler had begun. Human ships and Valorian ships tore into each other. Plasma fire and railgun slugs crossed in the darkness of space. Ships exploded. Debris flew everywhere. It was chaos and death and destruction on a scale that no human had ever witnessed. But the humans were winning. The Valorians could not understand what was happening. Their shields were useless. Their tactics did not work. Every time they thought they had a human ship cornered, the humans did something unexpected. They rammed Valorian vessels. They flew into weapons range and released nuclear mines. They fought with a fury that the Valorians had never seen. Eddie Wong sat in a landing craft with 200 other Marines, waiting for the ground assault. Through the small window, he could see Valorian ships burning. He could see the orbital defense platforms going dark one by one. He could see victory taking shape. "Almost time," he said to the Marines around him. "Remember your training. Stay calm, trust your team, and shoot everything that is not human." The landing craft shook as it entered the atmosphere of the staging base. Below them was a city of crystal towers and golden spires. It was beautiful in a cold, alien way. Soon it would be a battlefield. Amy Nielsen gripped her rifle tightly. Her hands were steady. Her heart was calm. She had waited 6 months for this moment. 6 months of training and waiting and burning with the need for revenge. Now it was finally here. The landing craft hit the ground hard. The doors flew open. Marines poured out into an alien world. Amy's boots touched soil that no human had ever walked on. The air smelled strange, like metal and flowers. The sky was purple, with 2 small suns. Everything was wrong and alien and terrifying. She did not care. She raised her rifle and started. Moving forward. The ground battle lasted 4 days. The Valorians threw everything they had at the humans. They sent tanks and aircraft and millions of soldiers. They thought sheer numbers would overwhelm the invaders. They were wrong. The humans did not fight like any enemy the Valorians had faced before. They did not stand in neat lines. They did not follow predictable patterns. They hid in shadows and struck from behind. They set traps and ambushes. They fought dirty and mean and desperate. Amy fought through corridors and streets and buildings. She killed more enemies than she could count. Each one was a payment on a debt that could never be fully paid. Each one was a small piece of justice for Tommy and the 70,000 others. On the 3rd day, she found herself in a Valorian communications hub. Her squad had cleared the building room by room. Now, they stood among machines they did not understand, looking at screens filled with alien writing. "Santos needs to see this," her squad leader said. "This looks important." It was more than important. It was everything. The communications hub contained complete maps of Valorian space. Every system, every base, every fleet position, and most importantly, the location of the Imperial throne world itself. When the battle finally ended, 30,000 Marines stood victorious on alien soil. They had lost 20,000 friends and brothers and sisters. But they had won. They had proven that humans could fight the Empire and win. Danny Ortiz walked through the captured city as the last fires died out. Around him, Marines cheered and embraced. They had done the impossible. They had hurt an empire that had ruled for 12,000 years. But Danny was not celebrating. He was looking at the captured star maps. He was looking at the path to the enemy's heart. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. "We have a long way to go." News of the human victory at Kepler spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For 12,000 years, no one had beaten the Valorian Empire. No one had even come close. The Empire was eternal and invincible. Every species in the galaxy knew this truth. It was simply how things were done. Now the truth had shattered. On the Valorian throne world, High Emperor Malkuth VII flew into a rage. He executed 3 admirals for their failure. He ordered the largest fleet in 1,000 years to assemble and destroy the human threat. He demanded that Earth be burned to bare rock as punishment for this insult. But the humans were not waiting to be destroyed. Maria Santos studied the captured star maps day and night. She saw something that gave her hope. The Valorian Empire was huge, but it was not strong. It was held together by fear, not loyalty. Hundreds of conquered species lived under Valorian rule. They worked as slaves and soldiers. They paid tribute and obeyed orders. But they did not love their masters. "The Empire is built on oppression," Maria explained to the War Council. "Every species they have conquered hates them. They just need someone to show them that resistance is possible, that the Empire can be beaten." General O'Brien understood immediately. "We start a revolution. Exactly. We split our forces. Small teams go to different worlds. We arm resistance movements. We train guerrilla fighters. We show the galaxy that freedom is possible. It was a dangerous plan. The human forces were small. Spreading them out would make them weaker. If the Valorian counterattack came before the revolution took hold, humanity would be crushed. But there was no other choice. Humanity could not defeat the Empire alone. They needed allies. And allies would only come if they believed the Empire could fall. The Marines split into dozens of small teams. Each team was sent to a different world. Their mission was simple but hard. Start a fire that would burn down an empire. Eddie Wang led a team of 50 Marines to a mining world called Koloth. The planet was dark and cold. Giant machines dug into the ground and pulled out precious metals. The beings who worked the machines were called Chithari. They looked like large insects with 6 legs and hard shells. The Chithari had been slaves for 800 years. 800 years of digging and suffering and dying in the mines. 800 years of watching their children taken away to work on other worlds. 800 years of hopelessness died when Eddie's team destroyed the Valorian garrison. The Chithari did not celebrate. They did not know how. They had forgotten what joy felt like. But when Eddie gave them weapons and showed them how to use them, something changed. A light came into their eyes. Something that had been dead for generations stirred back to life. "You can fight back," Eddie told them through a translator. "You do not have to be slaves anymore. Join us. Help us tear down the empire that has hurt you for so long." The first Chithari to take a weapon was an old female. She had worked in the mines for 60 years. Her shell was cracked and gray. Her legs could barely hold her up. She held the rifle like it was made of gold. "I have waited my whole life for this moment," she said. "I will die fighting before I go back to the chains." Similar scenes played out across the spiral arm of the galaxy, on a water world called Meridian. Peaceful aquatic beings called the Mendari learned to fight for the first time in their history. They had always been gentle. They had always believed in peace. But peace had not saved them from slavery. On a harsh desert world, the Gorath remembered their ancient warrior traditions. They had once been proud fighters. The Empire had broken them and made them servants. Now they remembered who they used to be. On a dying world stripped of all resources, the Veleth offered themselves as pilots. They had nothing left to lose. Their planet was a husk. Their people were scattered and broken. All they had was rage and the desire for revenge. Amy Nielsen found herself on a jungle world called Verdant. The beings there were like large cats that walked on 2 legs. They were called the Tereth. They had been conquered 500 years ago and forced to serve as ground soldiers for the Empire. Amy's job was to teach them human infantry tactics. It should have been simple. The Tereth were natural warriors. They were strong and fast and brave, but they had been taught for 500 years that resistance was pointless, that the Empire always won. That fighting back only led to more suffering. The leader of the Tereth was a scarred female named Tana. She was the best warrior Amy had ever seen, but her eyes were dead. Centuries of defeat had crushed her spirit. One night, as the alien sun set over the jungle, Tana asked Amy a question. "Why do you fight? Your species is small and weak compared to the Empire. You could hide on your homeworld. You could surrender and live as servants. Why do you choose war?" Amy was silent for a long moment. She thought about Tommy. She thought about Phoenix. She thought about all the reasons she had to hate. "Because 70,000 of my people are dead," she finally said. "Children, old people, families having breakfast. They died because the Empire decided they were in the way. They did not get to choose. They did not get to fight back. They just died." She looked at Tana with hard eyes. I fight because if I do not, their deaths mean nothing. I fight so that what happened to them never happens again. I fight because some things are worth dying for." Tana stared at her for a long time. Then something changed in the alien's eyes. The deadness faded. Something fierce and proud took its place. "Then we will fight with you," Tana said, "until the Empire falls or we fall ourselves. This is the only honorable path." 9 months after Kepler, the coalition numbered over 2,000 ships. Humans in Chithari and Mendari and Gorath and Velith and Terith. 12 species united by hatred of the Empire and hope for freedom. It was not enough to defeat the Valorians directly, but it was enough to make them afraid. It was enough to shake the foundations of their power. It was enough to give the galaxy something it had not had in 12,000 years. Hope. Danny Ortiz stood on the bridge of the Spirit of Phoenix and looked at the fleet around him. Ships of every shape and size. Beings from a dozen worlds. All of them ready to fight and die for freedom. "They called us primitives," he said to himself. "They thought they could murder our people without consequences. They had no idea what they were starting. The final battle was coming. The throne world waited, and an army of the desperate and the defiant was ready to bring it down." The throne world was called Ascendant Prime. It was the heart of the Valorian Empire, the most beautiful and powerful planet in the galaxy. No enemy had ever attacked it. No enemy had ever been foolish enough to try. 18,000 warships protected Ascendant Prime. Orbital platforms with weapons that could destroy moons surrounded it. An entire civilization's worth of military power waited to crush any threat. The throne world was invincible. The coalition attacked anyway. 3,000 ships jumped into the system. Humans in Chithari and Mendari, and all the other species who had joined the fight for freedom. They were outnumbered 6-1. The mathematics said they would lose. Every military calculation said they would be destroyed. But mathematics did not account for courage. Mathematics did not account for rage. Mathematics did not account for beings who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight. For Maria Santos commanded the human fleet from the carrier Independence. She had planned this battle for months. She knew the odds were terrible. She also knew there was no other choice. If they did not take down the throne world, the Empire would eventually crush them. This was their one chance. "All ships," she broadcast to the coalition fleet. "This is the moment we have been fighting for. Behind us are the worlds we have freed. The peoples who now look to the stars without fear. The children who will grow up knowing that freedom is possible." She paused, letting her words reach every ship, every species, every warrior. "We did not start this war, but we are going to finish it. For Phoenix, for Earth, for every being who ever suffered under imperial tyranny. Attack." The Battle of Ascendant Prime was the largest space battle in the history of the galaxy. Ships exploded everywhere. Plasma fire and railgun slugs and nuclear missiles filled the void between planets. The darkness of space lit up with death and destruction. Thousands of ships burned and broke apart. The coalition lost half their fleet in the first day. It seemed like the end. The Valorians were winning through sheer numbers. The mathematics was proving correct. Then something wonderful happened. The conscript crews on Valorian ships started to defect. They were members of conquered species, forced to serve their masters. They had heard about the coalition. They had heard about the liberation of their homeworlds. Now, they saw a chance to be free. One by one, Valorian ships turned on each other. The orbital defense platforms went next. They were manned by subject species who had been forced to serve. When they saw the Empire losing, they made their choice. The great weapons that protected the throne world began firing on Valorian ships. Instead of coalition vessels, the unthinkable happened. The planetary shields of Ascendant Prime fell. Danny Ortiz led the Marine Landing Force. 20,000 humans and 50,000 Allied soldiers dropped from orbit. Their landing craft fell through the purple sky like angry rain. Below them was the most beautiful city any of them had ever seen. Golden spires and crystal towers and gardens that stretched for miles. Soon it would be a graveyard. The Imperial Guard met them at the landing zones. These were not conscripts. These were true Valorians. The elite warriors who had protected the throne for 1,000 years. They were bigger and stronger and better equipped than anything the Coalition had faced. They died anyway. The Coalition forces fought through streets of gold and crystal. They pushed toward the Imperial Palace at the center of the city. Every block was a battle. Every building had to be cleared. The Imperial Guard made them pay for every step, but the Coalition kept coming. They could not be stopped. They could not be turned back. They had come too far and lost too much to fail now. Amy Nielsen was among the first to breach the palace gates. She had fought across 12 worlds in the past year. She had killed more enemies than she could count. She had watched friends die beside her. She had become something hard and cold and unstoppable. But inside, she was still the same girl who had lost her little brother. She still carried Tommy's memory with her. She still heard his voice sometimes, telling her about movies and soccer games and chocolate ice cream. "Almost there?" she whispered to his ghost. Almost done. The throne room was enormous. Golden pillars reached up to a ceiling painted with stars. Ancient art from 1,000 conquered civilizations decorated the walls. And at the far end, on a throne made of crystal, sat High Emperor Malkuth VII. He was very old. 400 years of life had left him thin and frail. But his eyes were sharp and cruel. He had ruled the galaxy for most of those 400 years. He had ordered the deaths of billions. He had crushed species and destroyed worlds. He had ordered the attack on Phoenix. Danny Ortiz walked toward the throne. Marines and Allied soldiers spread out behind him. They all had their weapons raised. They were all ready to fire. "You cannot win," the Emperor said. His voice was calm, even arrogant. "Even if you kill me, the Empire will continue. We have ruled for 12,000 years. We will rule for 12,000 more." Danny stopped 10 feet from the throne. "You killed 70,000 Americans," he said. "Men, women, and children who never threatened you, who never even knew you existed. You killed them because it was convenient, because we were in your way." The Emperor laughed. It was an ugly sound. They were primitives. They were nothing, like insects crushed under a boot. They did not matter. Danny raised his pistol. They were people. They were our people. Every single one of them mattered. He pulled the trigger. The Emperor's body fell from the throne. The most powerful being in the galaxy, dead from a single bullet. It was almost too simple. Almost too easy. But then, just as often as in the months that followed, the Valorian Empire collapsed. Without a strong emperor, the various factions turned on each other. The subject species rose up across 10,000 worlds. Old grudges surfaced. Old hatreds exploded. Within a year, the 12,000-year-old empire was nothing but a memory. Humanity emerged from the war changed forever. No longer primitive. No longer alone. They took their place among the stars as a people who had faced the greatest power in the galaxy and refused to bow. A memorial was built in New Phoenix, on the ashes of the old city. 70,000 names were carved into its walls. Each name a person. Each person a life cut short. Amy Nielsen visited the memorial on its dedication day. She found her brother's name and touched the carved letters gently. "We did it, Tommy," she whispered. "We made them pay. Every single one of them. And we made sure it can never happen again." Danny Ortiz gave the final address at the ceremony. He stood before a crowd of humans and aliens, all united by what they had survived together. "People ask me if it was worth it," he said. "The lives we lost, the horrors we saw, the things we had to become." He looked at the names on the wall. 70,000 souls who had been taken too soon. I think about those 70,000 every single day. And I believe they would tell us that freedom is always worth fighting for. That tyranny must always be opposed. That no matter how powerful the enemy, the human spirit cannot be conquered. He straightened and offered a final salute to the names on the wall. "Semper Fi, Marines. Our work here is done. The war was over. Humanity had won. The dead had been avenged. And among the stars, a new era was beginning. An era where no one would ever underestimate humans again.